There is a version of you that already exists. Not in the future, not after the next win, the next paycheck, the next perfect morning routine. Right now. Somewhere underneath the noise of your ordinary Tuesday, there is a person who already made the decision you've been circling for months. They already sent the message, already closed the tab, already stood up from the chair you're still sitting in. You haven't met them yet, not because they're far away, but because you keep choosing the version of today that doesn't require you to. Stay with me, because I'm not going to tell you to believe in yourself. I'm going to show you exactly what's standing between who you are right now and who you already know you could be, and why the gap is smaller and stranger than you think. Here's something almost nobody says out loud. Most people don't fail because life is hard. They fail because they've gotten extremely good at almost. Almost starting. Almost leaving. Almost saying the thing. Almost becoming. Almost is comfortable. Almost lets you keep the dream without ever risking it. As long as something stays in the someday folder, it can never disappoint you because it was never really tried. If you're honest with yourself right now, and I mean actually honest, not the polite version you say in your head, you probably have a list. Not written down anywhere, just carried. A conversation you haven't had, a version of your work you haven't shown anyone, a relationship with yourself you keep meaning to repair once things calm down. Things are never going to calm down. That's not pessimism. That's just what 40 years of paying attention to human beings tells us. There is no finish line where obligations stop and clarity finally floods in. The noise doesn't end. You just get better, or worse, at moving through it. So here's the real question this video is going to answer, piece by piece. Not, how do I get motivated? Because motivation was never the problem. The real question is, what actually has to happen inside a person before they stop almost living and start actually living? There's an answer. It's not mystical. It's not a hack. It's a mechanism, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's start where most people never think to look. Picture a room you've lived in for years. Nothing dramatic ever happened there. No fire, no flood, no single event you could point to. Just ordinary days stacked on top of each other until one afternoon you walk in and something feels off. You can't name it at first. The furniture's the same. The light comes through the window at the same angle it always has, but something in you has quietly changed the way you're seeing it. That unfinished project on the desk isn't just clutter anymore. It's a question you've been avoiding answering. That book you meant to read isn't just sitting there. It's a small, silent reminder of the person you told yourself you'd become this year. Nothing in the room moved. You did. This is the part almost nobody talks about honestly. Change doesn't usually begin with an event. It begins with a shift in attention. One day, the mind simply stops looking away from something it has been looking away from for a very long time. And once that happens, once you actually see the pattern instead of just living inside it, you can't fully go back. You might still repeat the pattern tomorrow. You probably will. But some part of you now knows it's a pattern, and that knowledge changes the weight of every repetition after it. I want you to think about your own version of that room, not the physical one, the internal one, the habit you keep explaining away, the relationship you keep excusing, the goal you keep quietly downgrading so the gap between where you are and where you said you'd be feels smaller. What would it feel like to actually look at it? Not to fix it yet, just to look. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. As long as something stays vague, it stays safe. Vague problems don't require you to do anything. They just sit there, humming quietly in the background, costing you energy you don't even notice you're spending. The moment something becomes specific, it becomes your responsibility. And that's exactly why most people keep their problems blurry on purpose, not out of laziness, but out of self-protection. But protection has a price, and the price is that you stay exactly where you are. There's a strange kind of relief on the other side of that fear, though, because if your choices built the room you're standing in, your choices can also rebuild it. That's not a comforting slogan. That's just structurally true. Nothing that was constructed by repeated decisions is permanent. It's just consistent, which is a very different thing. Consistent things can be changed. They just require you to be as consistent about the new direction as you were about the old one. There's a sentence that quietly runs most people's lives, and it almost never gets said out loud because it doesn't need to be. It just operates underneath everything. Not yet. Once things settle down, it sounds reasonable. It even sounds responsible. But follow it far enough and you'll notice something strange. The conditions for yet never actually arrive. There's always a new complication, a new reason this particular week isn't the right one, a new emergency that conveniently postpones the decision you didn't fully want to make anyway. Here's what nobody tells you about waiting for the right moment. The right moment is not a real thing. It's a story the mind tells itself so it can feel like it's being careful instead of admitting it's afraid. Think about how much of your life has already been spent in the waiting room. Not living badly, just paused, half committed. One foot in the old life, one foot hovering near the new one, never quite landing. And the cruel part is, waiting feels like progress. It feels productive. You research, you plan, you imagine every version of how it could go. You watch videos exactly like this one, collecting insight after insight, and something in you starts to feel like understanding is the same thing as changing. It isn't. Understanding a problem and living differently because of it are two completely separate skills. Most people are excellent at the first one and never develop the second. I want to be direct with you here because gentle honesty is still honesty. If you've watched dozens of videos like this over the years, read the books, save the quotes, and your life still looks the way it did 2 years ago, the issue was never information. You have enough information. You've had enough information for a long time. What you don't have yet is the willingness to feel the discomfort of moving without a guarantee. That's the trade nobody wants to make explicit. So let's make it explicit right now. Certainty and action cannot coexist. Every single time you've ever done something that actually mattered, really mattered, you did it without knowing for sure it would work. Certainty comes after the leap, if it comes at all. It is never the price of admission. It's the reward for having already paid a different price, the willingness to not know. So when you catch yourself saying, "I'll do it once I'm sure," notice what that sentence is really doing. It's not describing a future condition. It's describing a permanent postponement dressed up as patience. There's a difference between waiting wisely and waiting as a disguise for fear. Wise waiting has an endpoint you can name. Fear waiting has an endpoint that keeps moving every time you get close to it. Ask yourself honestly which one you're doing right now. You already know the answer. You knew it before I finished the sentence. Let's talk about something that almost never gets discussed because it doesn't look like a problem from the outside. It looks like nothing at all. Unmade decisions have weight. Not the decision you eventually make, the decision you're still carrying, unresolved, dragging behind you into every unrelated part of your day. The conversation you haven't had sits in the back of your mind while you're trying to focus on something else. The choice you haven't committed to quietly taxes your attention even when you're doing chores, watching a show, lying in bed at 1 a.m., staring at the ceiling for reasons you can't quite name. This is one of the most underrated forms of exhaustion that exists. It's not physical. You haven't done anything. And that's exactly the problem. The mind is spending enormous energy holding multiple futures open at once. And holding things open is expensive. Think of your attention like a single beam of light. When you're undecided, that beam isn't gone. It's just split into 4 or 5 directions at once, and none of them are bright enough to actually illuminate anything. You feel busy. You feel like you're thinking about it a lot, but nothing is getting brighter because the light is being divided instead of focused. The moment a real decision gets made, even a small one, even an imperfect one, something shifts almost immediately. Not because the outcome is guaranteed, because the beam collapses back into a single direction. All of that scattered energy that was maintaining 5 open possibilities suddenly has one job instead of 5. That's why people often describe relief right after a hard decision, even when the decision itself is scary. The fear didn't disappear. The fragmentation did. Here's a practical way to feel this in your own life. Think of the decision you've been sitting on the longest. Not the biggest one, the oldest one. The one that's been quietly open in the background for months, maybe years. Now ask, what has staying undecided actually protected you from? Usually the honest answer is nothing. It hasn't protected you from disappointment because you're still disappointed you haven't moved. It hasn't protected you from risk because staying still is its own risk, just a quieter one. All it's really done is spread the discomfort out over a longer period of time instead of concentrating it into one honest moment. There's an old idea, worn smooth from centuries of use, that's still true today. You rarely regret the decisions you made and grew from. You regret the years you spent unable to choose at all. You don't need certainty to move. You need enough conviction to take the next honest step and the willingness to adjust once you're standing somewhere you can actually see from. Here's something that will change how you experience the rest of your life if you actually let it land. Nothing that happens to you arrives pre-labeled. Not the rejection, not the setback, not the comment someone made that's been replaying in your head for 3 days. None of it comes with a built-in meaning stamped onto it. The event was identical. The aftermath was completely different because the meaning was never actually in the event. It was assigned afterward by the person experiencing it. This isn't about pretending bad things are secretly good. That's a different, weaker idea. And it usually backfires because it asks you to lie to yourself. This is something sturdier. Recognizing that in the space between what happened and how you respond, you have more authorship than you've been using. Here's the practice, and it's simpler than it sounds. The next time something difficult happens, try to catch the half second before the story starts. Before, "This means I can't," or "This means I'm not ready," or "This means it's too late." In that half second, the event is still just an event, neutral, unassigned, and you get to decide, consciously this time, what story you attach to it. This is not about becoming numb to pain. Pain is real, and it deserves to be felt honestly. It's about refusing to let a single moment write a permanent verdict about who you are. People who move through difficulty with a strange kind of steadiness aren't necessarily stronger than everyone else. Often, they've simply practiced this pause enough times that it's become automatic in the opposite direction. Automatic toward, this is hard and I can work with it, instead of automatic toward, this is proof I should stop. That's a skill, not a personality trait, which means it can be built slowly, the same way any skill is built, through repetition, in small moments, long before the big ones arrive. Let's talk about fear honestly, because most advice about it is either dismissive, just don't be afraid, or worshipful, trust your fear, it's always right. Both are wrong in ways that quietly keep people stuck. Your nervous system was built to keep an ancient version of you alive, the one that needed to worry about real physical danger every single day. It was not built to distinguish between there is a predator in the grass and I might feel embarrassed sending this email to an old, fast, protective part of your brain. Both can trigger something startlingly similar. That means fear doesn't reliably tell you what's dangerous. It tells you what's unfamiliar. And unfamiliar is not the same thing as unsafe. This distinction matters more than almost anything else in this video. So let it sit for a second. If you waited for fear to disappear before acting, you'd be waiting forever. Because fear isn't designed to disappear before the unfamiliar thing happens. It's designed to quiet down after you've done the unfamiliar thing enough times that it stops being unfamiliar, which means the order most people expect, feel confident, then act, has it backward almost every time. The actual order, the one that shows up again and again in people who've built real change into their lives, is act uncertain and shaking if necessary, and let the confidence arrive afterward, earned as a byproduct of having survived the thing you were afraid of. Confidence isn't a prerequisite, it's a residue. Here's a way to test this in your own life. Think of something you're genuinely good at now, something that used to intimidate you: driving, public speaking, a skill at work. Chances are you didn't wait to feel confident before doing it. You did it while feeling completely unqualified, repeatedly, and the confidence showed up later, quietly, without an announcement. Why would this area of your life be any different? There's a particular kind of courage that doesn't look like courage from the outside. It's not the dramatic kind you see in movies. It's smaller and stranger. It's making the call while your hands are unsteady, sending the message while your stomach is in knots, walking into the room while every part of you wants to turn around. The fear doesn't leave first. It comes along for the ride, and somewhere along the way, without asking permission, it gets quieter. That's not the absence of fear. That's what actually moving through fear looks like in real life. Unglamorous, a little shaky, and completely available to you right now, exactly as you are, with nothing else required. Now, we get to something most people skip entirely, because it doesn't look like the main event. It looks like a side detail. It isn't. Every time you tell yourself you're going to do something, and then don't, something happens beneath the surface that has nothing to do with the task itself. A small, quiet transaction takes place. Your mind takes note, not dramatically, not with an alarm, just quietly. A small deposit is made into a ledger you're not consciously tracking, and the entry says, this person's word to themselves doesn't always hold. Do this enough times, across enough small promises, and something predictable happens. You stop fully believing yourself, not other people, yourself. You develop a quiet background skepticism toward your own commitments because you've watched yourself break them before, over and over, in ways too small to ever properly apologize for. This is one of the most overlooked sources of low confidence that exists. People search for confidence in achievement, in appearance, in approval, when often the real leak is much closer to home. It's the 7 a.m. alarm you keep snoozing after telling yourself last night you wouldn't. It's the workout you skip for the 4th time this month. It's the messages you keep meaning to send. None of these individually matter much. Together, they teach you not to trust yourself. Here's the good news, and it's genuinely good. This works exactly the same way in reverse. Every small promise kept is also a deposit. Just the opposite kind. You said you'd get up, and you got up. You said you'd have the hard conversation, and you had it, even badly, even imperfectly. Each of these moments is unglamorous. None of them will be remembered by anyone else. But internally, they're doing something enormous. They're rebuilding your belief that when you say something to yourself, it actually happens. This is where real confidence comes from. Not from external proof that you're impressive, but from internal proof that you're reliable. Those are very different foundations. One depends on the world cooperating with you. The other depends only on you. You don't need a dramatic transformation to start rebuilding this. You need one small, keepable promise. Something almost embarrassingly modest. Not, I'll change my whole life this month. Something like, I'll make my bed today. Or, I'll respond to that one message before I go to sleep. Keep it. Then keep the next one. Then the next one. This is slow, unglamorous, and it will not make an interesting story to tell anyone. But it is, without exaggeration, one of the most reliable paths back to genuinely liking who you are. Not because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you've proven quietly to yourself that you actually are. There's a story our culture tells constantly, in movies, in highlight reels, in 3-minute summaries of other people's decades. The story of the single dramatic turning point. The moment everything changed. The before and after. It's a compelling story. It's also, almost always, a simplified one. What actually happens underneath most real transformations is far less cinematic. It's 1,000 ordinary Tuesdays. A person who chose the slightly harder thing today, and then again tomorrow, and then again the day after, long after it stopped feeling exciting or new. Nobody was filming it. There was no music swelling in the background, just a quiet accumulation of decisions that, individually, looked like nothing. This matters because if you're waiting for the cinematic moment, the lightning bolt realization that finally makes everything click, you might be waiting for something that was never actually required. You don't need a breakthrough. You need a Tuesday, then another one, then another one after that. Think about anything in your life that's actually strong right now. A relationship, a skill, a habit you don't even think about anymore because it's just part of who you are. None of it arrived in a single moment. It arrived through repetition so consistent, it eventually stopped feeling like effort and started feeling like identity. That's the real target. Not motivation, not inspiration. Identity, the quiet, accumulated evidence of who you've actually been choosing to be, one unremarkable day at a time. And here's the part that should feel like relief instead of pressure. You don't have to figure out the next 10 years right now. You don't have to solve the whole story today. You only have to handle the next honest choice in front of you, the one that's actually available right now in whatever ordinary moment you're in while you're listening to this. The future isn't waiting somewhere far away for you to arrive at it. It's being built, quietly, in exactly this kind of moment, right now, whether you notice it or not. So, let's come back to where we started. That version of you who already made the decision, who already stood up, who already sent the message, closed the tab, kept the promise. They're not ahead of you in time. They're not luckier or braver in some permanent built-in way. They just stopped waiting for the feeling to arrive first. They made the deposit before they felt ready to. They looked at the room and actually let themselves see it. They let the fear come along for the ride instead of waiting for it to leave the car first. You have access to every single thing that person has. Nothing was withheld from you. There's no missing ingredient, no secret you haven't been told yet. There's only the next ordinary moment sitting right in front of you, quietly waiting to find out what you'll do with it. You don't have to fix your whole life today. You just have to stop being someone who waits and start, however small, however shaky, being someone who moves. That's the whole shift. Not dramatic, not distant, just a decision made quietly right now to stop almost living and start actually living instead. If this found you at the right moment, take that as exactly what it is. Not a coincidence, but a chance. And if you want more of these conversations, ones that don't just inform you but actually walk with you, stay close. There's more here for you when you're ready. Until then, take care of your mind, keep your word to yourself, and keep moving.